Hey guys, welcome to Rock and Reacts. We're here after a electrifying victory in front of a sold-out crowd at Furrow Field from the number 6 ranked Missouri Tigers over the number 24 ranked Boston College Eagles. Lot to talk about after this game today. Coach Drink said sloppiest game of the season so far, and obviously the first time that this team has really experienced some adversity, but they did indeed pull it out in the end. Quentin, I wanted to ask you about what you felt. How do you feel the Tigers opened up the game against a mobile quarterback like Castellanos? And how do you think they adjusted?
Yeah, definitely a slow start. I mean, through the first two games against Florida State and Buffalo, the only period of time where that game was ever really in doubt was that first quarter against Buffalo. And I was curious to see how Mizzou was going to start again. And once again, the opponents looked at the very least an even match. This time, honestly, Boston College looked like a superior match. I think the biggest worry for a lot of people regarding Mizzou's defense was not Nick Castellanos. He plays in the MLB. Thomas Castellanos, who plays college football at Boston College. I think it was going to be Thomas Castellanos' ability to use his legs and extend plays with his legs. And we saw that first play of the game. It was a rollout to the right. It was only a pickup of 7, but I was thinking to myself, could this be a trend? Could this be a continuation? And turns out it wasn't. Really, after that first quarter, those first couple of drives, I thought Mizzou did a fantastic job of keeping Castellanos in the pocket. Drogovic said after the game that he thought they did a really great job of keeping him in the pocket. I think when you look at a game like last year against LSU and Jaden Daniels, Mizzou did not do a very good job of keeping him in the pocket. You see rushes from the edge, where the edge rusher is going past the quarterback. And so now the defense is down a man, and Jaden Daniels oftentimes was able to exploit that. This time around, I thought Mizzou's defensive line especially was super cohesive. Rarely did you ever see Castellanos able to break something to the edge, which he's done already a lot of times this season. He's made most of his money off the scrambles versus design runs. And even on design runs, there was not a whole lot of room as the game went on, especially on the interior. And Adeen, I'd like you to expound on that more after those first couple of drives. The defensive line especially really tightened up. What did you see?
So you saw that one of the things that they were allowing from Boston College that they definitely didn't want to allow was, Robichaux was kind of getting some runs going early in the game in between the tackles. So to fix that up, to really clean that up, they added another lineman to the defensive interior for most of the plays. And one thing I really noticed was the way they were rushing the quarterback. You could see they were kind of trying to trap Castellanos with his own offensive lineman. The objective really looked like to kind of forklift, push their offensive lineman into Castellanos rather than going around the edge like they did last year in the Jaden Daniels games, as you put it, because in that situation, he was just leaving a wide open hole down the middle. And even with a quarterback spy and middle linebacker, you got a mobile quarterback versus a middle linebacker. I know who's going to win that battle most of the time, especially with a guy who can run as good as Castellanos over here. And that adjustment as a whole just made Castellanos super uncomfortable. You could see that he was forcing things that he normally doesn't. Obviously, both those interceptions that they had this game, you can really attribute it to the confusion that the defensive line created, because these are both plays that a quarterback with the experience that Castellanos has would not make. Both of them throws that are just not there, and it's a heads up play by the DBs, Travis Johnson and Drayton Norwood, but even more so, you have to give a lot of credit to the D line for creating a play like that. And I think it was just Drink said after the game, Corey Batoon, he's a cool cucumber, and I think that's probably as good of a description as I've ever heard for him so far from what I've seen this season. There were 2 busts in coverage. Drink described it as Little League football type of play after the fumble, and then the entire team tries to pursue the quarterback, which is good in theory, but really not. It really looked like a Engage 8 kind of Madden play after this point. And with those plays, if there's more than 2 guys going out for a route, then there's probably a touchdown. And Reed Harris, proved them right there. And then obviously there's Kamari Morales wide open in cover 3. That was a play that definitely could be cleaned up. But if you clean up those plays, this is a 3-score win. Before that last drive, actually, Mizzou had only allowed 59 yards on 25 or something plays. after the Trevez Johnson interception. So, Quentin, I want to ask you about how big of a momentum shift that play was, and how do you think the offense kind of fed off of that momentum shift?
Yeah, so, I mean, Thomas Castellanos had missed a few open guys, and I was wondering when it would eventually cost him, and sure enough, it did. On a deep throw over the middle into very heavy coverage, Trevez Johnson was essentially playing center field. He read Castellanos' eyes perfectly, and more importantly, he came away with the catch. And he was able to get yards after the catch, which set Mizzou up pretty nicely. And then step two, in terms of generating momentum, trying to get it back, is you capitalize off of those big plays. And the few moments after Trevez Johnson's interception was Luther Burden breaking, I believe it was 3 or 4 tackles.
I'd say 4.
4 tackles on his way to the end zone. It's funny, if you take a screen grab, I say screen grab like I'm 50 years old, if you take a screenshot of where Luther Burden was amidst his catch and run, and you asked 100 random people, hey, do you think the wide receivers scored? Probably get a lot of no's, which has been a lot of Luther Burden touchdowns. But there were a few catches today, the touchdown catch included, where it looked like he was a one-man army facing a handful of opponents, and he bested all of them, including the touchdown catch. He spins away from one defender, breaks another 3 tackles, and scores. So he had 6 catches for 117 yards and a touchdown today. They were getting him pretty involved sporadically. They weren't feeding him the ball like, for example, they have been feeding Theo Weiss. That was more of a product, especially last week against Buffalo. That was more of a product of what the defense was giving Mizzou, and they were more than okay with running Theo Weiss on little hitches, on little posts, and getting 6 to 11 yards every single time. That's what led to career highs in receptions and reception yards. But I thought after the interception, Mizzou responded fantastically, and then Drayden Norwood comes away with another later, which was another huge play. I've been waiting for him to make a really big play. He made a handful of them last season in a reserve role, but he finally got his time to shine today. And then Dalen Carnell as well, even though he didn't come away with an interception, almost came away with one, and had 2 pretty sweet pass breakups. So I thought the secondary, although the 2 coverage busts were definitely inexcusable, and hopefully for their sake will get cleaned up for next week against Vanderbilt. But I thought they made big time plays and big moments.
Yeah, and one thing I wanted to touch on was early in the game, one of the stories was really how they were targeting Tornado Pride. They were targeting Tornado Pride a lot, and Tornado Pride had a pretty harsh pass interference call, we'll say that, to extend a drive that led to some points on the board for BC. But after that, he really cleaned up his game and got his head in the game and didn't allow the Boston College receivers to really be a factor for the rest of the game. Castellanos was 155 yards and 2 touchdowns to begin the game, and I believe he didn't get much more than that to finish.
Yeah.
And one more thing that I want to talk about really was Nate Noel today. Nate Noel was absolutely phenomenal. Drink talked about how this was an outside zone kind of game, and if it's ever that kind of game, it really spells well for a fast back that can find the hole quite like Nate Noel. Mm-hmm. And he, right off the bat, starting the game, you could really tell that this is something the offense needs to place more emphasis on, because while Boston College was covering well to start the game, they were just overmatched in the interior, especially against the guards for Missouri today. One little thing, Brett Norfleet got some action today, but you can tell that his shoulder injury probably still lingering. He wasn't really keen to embrace contact today. Saw him on his first 2 catches kind of go down very quickly, where normally, fully healthy, Brett Norfleet's going to lower his shoulder and let a guy know. And really, as a whole, I think this game was defined by mental toughness from this team. This team responded to adversity well, not perfectly, but one shout out I want to give out to Blake Craig. Blake Craig had an absolutely phenomenal game. 4 for 4 on the field goals today, a booming 55-56 yarder. And if he can be like that, he's a redshirt freshman. He's got a lot of time, but if he can be like that consistently, you might not see him play until he's a senior. He's got a hell of a leg, and if he just can touch up that accuracy, obviously last week some misses from 50 plus, but if he can touch up that accuracy, he's going to be a great asset for this team. And other than that, really, Quinn, I want to ask you, what do you think this game means for next week obviously have another mobile quarterback coming into town who really put on a show, especially week one, and Diego Pavia. So what do you think about that?
I think this game showed that despite the personnel being different from last season, the foundation and the results for now seems to be the same. Mizzou, as you all watching probably know, came from behind a lot last season, whether it was Kentucky, whether it was Florida, whether it was even a rock fight against Ohio State. One of the defining traits of the 2023 team, out of many, was their ability to respond to early adversity. And they were faced with that once again today. And the past couple of weeks, as I had said before, they hadn't really been faced with that at all against Murray State and Buffalo. And they get knocked in the mouth early, go down 14-3. It's the quietest it had been in this young season here for Field, but they were able to respond on both sides of the ball. And I think Tre'Vez Johnson put it really nicely when he was asked about what was the key to bouncing back, and he said, "Don't flinch." And even though they, in a literal sense, flinched a handful of times, whether it was penalties, whether it was coverage busts, they were able to rebound, and they didn't let that snowball into future mistakes. And I still think highly of Boston College. I still think they're one of the better teams in the ACC. Again, especially after punking Florida State, who is now 0-3, still without a win after losing to Mike Norvell's former school in the University of Memphis on their home turf. And so I still think highly of Boston College. I still think that's a pretty good team. And as you said, Adeen, outside of a couple of coverage busts, I think this game could have been something like 27 to even 14, 27-7. I thought Mizzou's defense played really, really well. And what we're seeing right now is translatable. Obviously, a few nitpicks outside of the big things. We haven't really talked about Brady Cook, which I guess is a good and sort of bad, but mostly good thing. Didn't make any bad mistakes. His touchdown run was pretty sweet. The one where he stopped on, I don't even want to call it a dime. What's something smaller than a dime? Think of something smaller than a dime. That's where I think he stopped on. That has sent a couple of white jerseys in the other direction, dove in the end zone, and left Nate Noel pretty shocked. As he said after the game, he said he didn't think he had that kind of play in him, but lo and behold, Brady Cook showing off some superior athletic abilities on that touchdown run.
Yeah.
And so I think this stuff is translatable next week. Vanderbilt, these are not the same Commodores that Mizzou has been used to seeing, especially over the past few years. And so I think if they can translate their defensive efforts, especially defending a mobile quarterback like they did, not just with the defensive line, but the linebackers almost always had at least one spy.
Yeah.
On Thomas Castellanos, forced Diego Pavia to beat them with his arm. I think Mizzou's in a pretty good spot.
Yeah. And, Diego Pavia is one of those guys that he's not going to back down. He showed it at New Mexico State. And he showed that he is willing to do whatever it takes to get a victory, especially in week one. So a guy like that who knows how to win no matter where he's been, that's an intimidating player. So they're going to have to be ready for Diego. And just the rest of the Vanderbilt team as a whole, they look very, very good this year. If they come out in that game 3-0, they're going to have something to prove. They're going to look at that game as a game that they could springboard their season for the first time in a while since the James Franklin days. So really, they're going to have their heads up with that. But, that's really all we got to say. From Rock and Reacts, I'm Adeen Rao, and this is Quentin at Corpuel.
You remember.
No, I was kind of hoping you would say it.
Oh, okay. All right, we'll work on that for next time.
But thank you guys so much for watching, and we're signing out from Faroe Field. Bye.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Rock M Radio, a proud partner of Fans First Sports Network. Rock M Radio is the official podcast network of Rock M Plus, a new and exciting subscription service provided by me and the other voices of Rock M Radio. Please take a few moments to head over to rockm.plus and sign up for an account today. The cost is only $5 a month, and the benefits include access to our live podcast, a subscriber-only message board, weekly newsletters, and more. If you enjoyed this episode of Rock M Radio and would like to see more just like it beamed directly into your personal device, make sure to click the subscribe button below and tell your friends. Our podcast feed is available through the Apple Podcast app for iPhone, Google Podcast app for Android, whatever app you listen to your podcast. You can also find Rock M Radio on Spotify. If you're looking for a podcast about your favorite team that is not the Missouri Tigers, Fan First Sports Network is your answer. A full podcast network loaded with the team-specific podcasts covering Major League Baseball, the NFL, NHL, NBA, MLS, and more. And we'll be back with more episodes of Rock M Radio coming to you soon.